All right, good evening. I'll call this Tuesday, September 25th, 2018 meeting to order at, what do we got here, 7:06. The agenda is subject to change and includes those items reasonably anticipated by the chair to be discussed at this meeting. Not all agenda items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being broadcast live and will be replayed numerous times by WACA television. Is there anybody here audio recording the meeting? Seeing none, we will start with citizens' participation. Is there anybody here tonight for citizens' participation? Seeing none, we will move to the public discussion and overview of the 2013 Massachusetts Merged Food Code. Tom Curran, our food inspector, is going to lead us in a PowerPoint presentation. We do have copies of the PowerPoint presentation. Does anybody want one before we get started? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got, here, take that one.
There is a test at the end of it.
There will be a test, yes. We'll see. We'll see.
I can easily make them right here. I'll start them if I need to.
How many more do we need?
Left, I said, Laura, I can make the prints.
And if you decide you want one at the end of the meeting, we can certainly get you more at the end of the
Do we
meeting.
I can make some more prints right now.
Yeah, he's
right
gonna make
now.
some more and they'll be on the printer.
How many more do we need?
Anybody else? Did somebody not get one?
2, okay,
3 more?
3. Okay, I
Okay,
can
so
make
he's
them.
gonna make 3 more.
I'll make 5. You did.
So you're gonna have to make 6 more altogether.
6 more.
6 more altogether.
Sit next to one.
I'm gonna make a lucky 7
during
just in
the
case.
presentation.
Lucky 7. All right, with that, Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, my name's Tom Curran. I'm the food inspector for the Ashland Board of Health. And I've put together a short PowerPoint that kind of gives us a general overview of some of the key changes should we implement the 2013 code as a town bylaw. So first off, a lot of people are curious, how do we inspect food service establishments? We do risk-based food inspections. An urgent category risk is an establishment that's inspected 3 times annually. Might include a caterer with multiple complex cook-chill processes. It might include a nursing home, a hospital, volume feeding facilities. Your medium risk establishments are where most of your restaurants fall into that category, and they're inspected 2 times annually. And then after that comes your low-risk establishments, which is your CVS's, your variety stores, retail packaged food, non-temperature control safety foods being offered. In addition to this, the only time you'll see us over, depending on what category you fall into on this, is if there's a complaint-generated inspection. If we receive a constituent complaint here at the office, that will cause us to come out and conduct an inspection to see if the complaint is with just cause or if it's invalid. We conduct inspections based on the Food and Drug Administration's 5 major risk factors for foodborne illness. And they're listed here: poor personal hygiene, contaminated equipment, improper holding temperatures, improper cooking temperatures, and unsafe food sources. Personal hygiene, hand washing, showing up to work ill with a foodborne illness, contaminated equipment. Not many people look at a glove as equipment, but it is. It's considered a utensil in the food code. So that's why we encourage people to change their gloves frequently between tasks and after handling raw, potentially hazardous foods. Improper holding temperatures, as you know, well, now with the new code, the minimum for hot holding is 135 degrees. Cooking temperatures, you should know that, what your raw temperature control safety proteins, what the final cooking temperatures on those are. Chicken, 165 degrees, ground meat, 155 degrees, et cetera. And to make sure we're sourcing our food from licensed wholesale distributors. We're not sourcing food from a grocery store and delivering it to our restaurant in an unrefrigerated vehicle. We're not using game animals, things of that nature. So in Massachusetts, local boards of health are the primary designated authority to enforce 105 CMR 590, and that's the state sanitary code. Currently, the state sanitary code in Massachusetts references the 1999 food code, and the state issues what's called the merge food code that uses the 1999 food code as a foundational and then integrates Massachusetts specific laws into that. Right now at the state level, there's effort to update the code to the 2013 code. Ashland is vigorously looking into doing that here at the municipal level, I believe. And that's the purpose of this discussion tonight. The food code is updated regularly and provides a national standard and scientifically sound technical and legal basis for regulating retail, institutional, and the food service industry. The proposed amendments will include the regulation to incorporate the 2013 food code with its 2015 supplement. Why the revision? Because it all goes back to consistency and updating appropriate Massachusetts supplements. Will provide uniformity for inspections, for training health inspectors, and adhere to and meet the Center for Disease Control foodborne illness reduction goals. And also strengthens reporting requirements for foodborne illnesses. This is become more and more prevalent with outbreaks in areas that we haven't seen them before. We're seeing folks getting sick from fresh, various kinds of fresh produce. We're seeing outbreaks associated with poor decision-making in the role of people in charge of food service establishments. So it really goes back to illness policy and having an effective implemented illness policy with your food workers, so everybody's under the general understanding that they shouldn't show up to work sick. And if they're symptomatic with vomiting, jaundice, diarrhea, any of those issues, they shouldn't be working, they should be excluded, and the Board of Health should be notified. And the person can't be cleared to come back to work until they have clearance from a medical practitioner and the local Board of Health. So some of the key changes in the 2013 code is now, instead of potentially hazardous foods, the term is going to be, which you've noticed, and any of you have taken the ServSafe exam, they call it time temperature control safety foods. And those are foods with a moisture content that is appropriate environment for the water activity for bacteria to proliferate and needs temperature control and safe handling practices. Added provisions now cut leafy greens, such as spinach, kale, chard, tomatoes are now considered hazardous foods or temperature TCS foods. And now in the 2013 code, it talks about requiring establishments to notify the public that they can have access to their most recent health inspection. And that is a tool for accountability and transparency. All our inspections are public record anyways, but this puts the onus of the business owners to also have a level of accountability to make sure that their businesses are safe. So The 2013 code has also eliminated the term of critical, minor, and non-critical violations, and they've replaced that with priority, priority foundation, and priority foundation core. So if any of you are familiar with the prior terminology, critical, minor, and a non-critical violation, now it's going to be called this rather than that. Some examples, violation priority. We want to make sure we have proper segregation of raw and ready-to-eat foods. We want to avoid improper glove usage. You know, I can't count how many times, and I know Mark can attest to this, we'll go into a food service establishment and somebody will be wearing gloves, they'll handle raw chicken, and then they'll go to the hand sink and wash the gloves off and then go make a sandwich. Take the gloves off, wash your hands, put a new pair of gloves on. Inadequate cold holding. If you have a refrigerator on site that's not holding at below 41 degrees and it's elevated temperature, don't use the refrigerator. Remove the foods, call an ice company, get some dry ice, take corrective action to ensure proper cold holding temperatures. Because if I walk in there and the food's been in there, I make a determination that it's been in there for more than 4 hours out of temperature, guess what? It's going right to the dumpster. So priority foundation supports or facilitates a priority item. Another example, no person in charge present at the establishment. We want to make sure we have a designated person in charge in the absence of the certified food protection manager that is well-versed in food safety protocols, can take what the code calls active managerial control of the restaurant, can answer the questions of a health inspector, can know final cooking temperatures, cooling parameters, illness policy. We want to make sure we have accessible thermometers that are properly calibrated so you can take holding temperatures, final cooking temperatures. Shell stock tags it's another example for traceability purposes. We require if you serve raw shellfish that you keep those tags on record in chronological order for 90 days. And the reason for that is if there is an outbreak of Vibrio or anything of that nature, we can contact the state. John Rachapi at the state is the shellfish inspector. And he will go out to that shellfish bed and do a test and close the bed if warranted, if there's a presence of a bacteria that's causing illness. Another priority foundation is more of a floor, walls, and ceiling type issue, but you know, if you have a door open, you can leave the door open, but you better have a screen or means to prevent pest entry. Environmental contamination, a leaking ceiling, chemicals being stored in close proximity to where foods are stored or prepared, and you know, non-food contact surfaces that are soiled. The other key change with the 2013 food code again is the danger zone is no longer between 41 and 140 degrees. It's actually between 41 and 135 degrees. So 135 degrees is acceptable hot holding temperature for foods on a steam table, for example. And the other thing with this that's interesting is if you have commercially prepared, fully cooked product, a reheat temperature can also be 135 degrees now. Prior, it used to be, you used to have to reheat it to 165 degrees. Now, if it's a commercially prepared, fully cooked product, you can reheat it to 135 degrees. Hot and cold holding. Cold temperature control foods should be kept at 41 or below, as we said, and hot holding is 135 or greater. Discard after 4 hours. I talked about that time parameter. If your foods are falling into that danger zone, they should be discarded over 4 hours. Unless you're using time as a public health control, then you have approval to do that, but still the parameter for that is also 4 hours. So this is some more examples of violations. Obviously, hand washing is a key of key importance. It's a priority foundation item. Also keeping hand sinks fully stocked, soap, paper towels, and accessibility to hand sinks. I can't count how many times I go into a restaurant, we set up the layout, and there's a hand sink at the cook line, and then I go back for a routine inspection 6 months later, and the hand sink turned into a fry station. There's a cutting board on top of it, there's a trash barrel in front of it, there's no soap, there's no paper towels. The most important thing at your cook line is that hand sink, and the most important tool to prevent foodborne illness is hand washing. This touches on the new TCS foods, which I touched on, the cut tomatoes, the cut melons, the leafy greens. You know, if we're in a retail setting and we're packaging grab-and-go salads, we have to account for temperature loss at room temperature preparation, and we have to implement a cooling step after we put, if we make grab-and-go salads and we put them in a clamshell plastic container, we're preparing it at room temperature, there's gonna be temperature loss, whether we took the components to that salad out of the refrigerator even a half hour ago, there's still gonna be temperature loss at room temperature if you're not preparing them in a refrigerated room, and you can't just sign, seal, and deliver. You can't just close it, label it, and put it out. There has to be a cooling step before it gets presented to retail. So that's another example of things that I've seen in the field where folks are preparing grab-and-go items at room temperature. They seal it. The plastic container actually acts as an insulator, and you know, it'll temp out at 57 degrees. And that's where these issues come in when you're dealing with produce. We want to have a more stringent application of temperature control to these foods, because in recent years, as you know by news reports, that these foods have been implemented in some multi-state outbreaks of foodborne illness. There's also a new requirement for date marking foods to label prepared temperature control safety foods with a use by or sell date. If it's not used within 24 hours of preparation, so if you're packing up at the end of the day and you're putting your hot bar foods into containers and you're cooling them off properly, you want to make sure that they're dated before they're placed into storage. And that's a priority foundation. And there's also an allowance, there wasn't in the prior code, but now you can use a non-continuous cooking process. So before it wasn't allowed, now it is allowed, and the most closest example I can give you is marking off chicken breasts. If you want to put the grill marks on the chicken breasts for aesthetic purposes and then store them under temperature control until they're ready to get cooked again, you're allowed to do that, assuming you're you know, cooling it off properly. You're not marking the chicken and leaving it sit out at room temperature. You're marking the chicken and you're implementing a cooling step, and it's stored under refrigeration until you reintroduce it to a final cook step of 165 degrees. Now there's a new, we talked about glove use earlier. Now if you're performing the same task, you're not required to wash your hands between glove uses. You should wash your hands often, but if you're working at a busy deli counter and the only thing that you're doing is slicing turkey, it's acceptable now to take the gloves off and put new gloves on without washing your hands. So there's additional duties for this priority foundation code for the person in charge. They have to, now the person in charge or the certified food protection manager has to ensure that employees are trained in reporting requirements for illnesses. And they have to more closely supervise food employee practices. The prior code was a little vague in some areas about what the actual responsibility is for a person in charge or a certified food manager. There's more specificity in this code, and there's a greater accountability for the person in charge of the restaurant. And it's the direct responsibility of the person in charge to ensure employees are trained in food safety and allergy safety training. And in Massachusetts, we have the extra requirement of the Massachusetts Allergen Awareness Certificate, which, as some of you might know, is a short video that you watch. I think it's a $10 fee, and At the conclusion of the video, it prints out a certificate that's good for 5 years. This is an example of the employee agreement form that you could distribute to your food workers. There's a disclaimer at the bottom of the form saying that this is a suggestion, essentially not a requirement. However, in the new code, this kind of is a requirement because it puts the onus of reporting requirements under the umbrella of the person in charge now. So this is a good tool. I can email you guys a link if any business owners are here for this, this form. This kind of covers you. You give it to your food workers. They sign off on it. You keep it on record. And you have it in case, God forbid, one of your workers decides to show up ill and make other people sick. There's also a requirement of you have standard operating procedures in place for cleanup of bodily fluids, vomit, and diarrhea. Not a topic everybody wants to talk about, but this is, you know, the incident that comes to mind is the Chipotle norovirus outbreak in Boston, where a food worker was symptomatic with vomiting and diarrhea and was told to finish out the remainder of their shift, and consequently made 150 people sick. Was using the facilities in the restaurant to, you know, vomit or whatever, and so it's not something you want to really. You want to knock it down as soon as you can, because these fluids can aerosolize and settle on other surfaces, especially in environments where open foods are on a buffet line, and so it's kind of an important priority. And then that concludes the presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, Tom, I think you did a great job, and thank you for that. And more importantly, I want to thank everybody who took the time on a Tuesday night, gave up your Tuesday night to come here and talk about, you know, diarrhea and vomit and
Yeah.
food codes and everything like that. If we do have questions, I probably, just so people at home can hear the questions, maybe, Tom, you go back to your seat.
Sure.
And then anybody who does have questions, come up to the podium. That way, the people listening at home and, you know, they can distribute this. They'll be able to hear the questions. One thing I do want to make sure is that everybody that did come and that is a local restaurant owner, did everybody sign in? Did it? And if you didn't, everybody did sign in? Okay. Okay. And if you have your emails, that'd make it easier for Tom to double check, and he could email that acknowledgement form as well too, right? Sure. Okay. Hopefully you guys saw that tonight that this board is, the stated goal of this board and a voted on goal of this board is to be more proactive in the community. And really what we want, why we want to be proactive in the community is public health is very important to this board and to this department and to the town. And we want to be viewed as a resource, not as, oh God, here's the Board of Health again. That's not what this board's goal is we want to be a proactive, we want to be a friendly, approachable board with the same know that we're going to hold you guys accountable. And this is these types of forums, so I can't thank you guys enough, and I know the board feels that way, that you guys are here. If there's ever a question, you know, and you think it's a dumb question, Mark, Laura, anybody on the board here, we're all available to take your questions. Send us an email, send us a phone call, anything like that, please. I never want anybody to think, you know, that they can't pick up the phone or send a quick email and ask us any questions. And with that, I'm sure there are a few questions, and if you would, somebody have the courage to be the first one to ask the question, come up to the podium.
I just want to make sure that we have a disclaimer that this is not the complete set of rules and regulations, but
That's
there
correct.
may be things which are
That's
missing,
correct.
but we need to look at it. As an example, he didn't mention about the anti-choke, but that's also required.
Right, that's it,
Yeah.
that's
But then
exclusive to
there are very many
Massachusetts.
things, but this is the salient features of what is being changed, was being told.
Yep,
So
that's a good
Make
point.
sure, don't limit yourself saying, oh, this is it, we follow it. No, there are other things to follow too.
Good point.
And if you note, it's a merged food code. So basically, you have the federal food code merged with the state codes. And that's where your anti-choking is within the state part of the codes. We're not changing that, we're changing, we're updating to go from 1999 to 2013. Unfortunately, the state yet has not done that, but their goal is to get to the 2013 food code. But the anti-choking is an additional requirement above and beyond that within the merged food code under the state part of it. But it's a good point. It encompasses more than just this.
All right, so don't be shy. Who's got some questions? Who's going to lead us off?
I'll start with one.
There you go.
Just a quick question. You know, in my profession, I'm washing my hands after every patient as it is anyway, and now even with surgery, you know, at least 8, 9, 10 years ago, I don't have to necessarily scrub between cases if I don't want. I can use basically a souped-up hand sanitizer.
Right,
Is there a role for that for food establishments? Can they use a hand sanitizer in place of washing their hands at points, you know, for ease of use, or is that not
No,
considered?
hand sanitizer isn't an acceptable
It's not.
replacement for hand washing. It's a supplement to hand washing, but it's not an acceptable replacement.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's interesting that,
Yeah.
you know, with us, with, you know, those compounds that, you know, that supposedly I still do, because I feel like
Right.
if I'm going in and I'm gonna see a patient in the pre-op area, that it's almost kinda like I never washed in the first place, but that's not what the studies show. They show that these, you know, these hand sanitizing
And then hand sanitizer,
techniques-
remember, doesn't kill norovirus. Most hand alcohol-based will not kill norovirus,
Right.
and hand washing is an effective means to get rid of it on your
And most of
hands.
these are chlorhexidine based, so I guess it's a different chemical, but it's just interesting.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there might be other ones that are more, you know, potent that could, but,
Right. Understood. Okay, interesting, thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I got a couple
Go,
of.
sure, go for it.
My ultimate question is really to all of you out there, and that's, you know, do you have any concerns? Or do you see this as a positive thing moving forward? But leading up to that, the first question I would have is, can we adopt this food code before the state does, if we choose to?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And have any towns or cities adopted this code yet?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, there was, Tom, you had earlier mentioned, ServSafe is already using some of the language in their thing.
Yeah.
With the first, on that first page, the temperature.
Temperature control, safety.
So,
Yes.
is that implying that ServSafe is already up to speed on this, and that the current
Yeah,
training is kind
and
of?
most people are
adapted to this?
unfortunately up to speed because we're kind of using an antiquated code, unfortunately, in the Commonwealth.
Okay. So other than I wanted to know those questions, I would hope that those would be questions that maybe would be on your mind and would help you maybe respond to whether or not you had any concerns or other questions about this.
So why would somebody be opposed to merging the food code? It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Whenever something is presented, there are always the pros and the cons, so I'm trying to understand why
Could be
a group
industry.
of people would say, no, we don't wanna do it.
Because the legislature handles this, you know, your state reps and your state senators handle this, and, you know, the restaurant industry is quite influential. So there could be some lobbying efforts on this. There could be other priorities of the legislature, just, you know, other priorities come up and they just haven't gotten to it yet. But it is at the discretion of the legislature. So, I mean, that would be, you know, maybe a good follow-up meeting is if we bring, you know, Karen Spilka and Jack Lewis, who are our state senator or our state rep in there, and we have that type of conversation. But there's probably some lobbying done by the restaurant industry. You think that's a fair statement?
It could be, yeah, and, you know, it might end on the rung of priorities. I mean, as we saw, they were rushing through at the end of their session this year, and, but I think for the first time in a long time, there actually seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel, because the last I heard, the Public Health Council, and Mark knows this, has already put together this, you know, the draft, to be submitted. I think the Attorney General is reviewing it, and then from there on, I think it goes back to the legislature. I might be mistaken. So hopefully, you know, within the next year, we can see that this implemented at the state level.
The uniformity is very important throughout the country, that we have a uniform code. When you take your ServSafe courses or your Certified Food Manager courses, you want to have uniformity. And if you're learning something new that we haven't adopted yet, that makes it more difficult. So in the long run, I think there is light at the tunnel, both with the industry and getting our legislators to see the need to continue on with the additional scientific information that brings about these codes. These codes change based on science, and that's what we're trying to move along with, is the scientific process that's involved here.
Is the 2013 code the most recent code?
2017.
So why are they working to adopt it?
The state's looking at 2013. I had a discussion with an FDA rep last week about that as well, and we could look at the 2017, very minor changes between the two.
I just have one question on the grab-and-go salads.
Sure.
You're saying, so grab-and-go, when you're preparing them to sell later on, or grab-and-go?
Yes.
We're making them fresh. Making them fresh, it's not an issue, because we're coming out of the fridge.
Exactly, yeah.
Everything's being made and it's going right to the customer.
Right, so that's
There's no
immediate
issue with
service. No. What I was kinda talking about is when it's in a retail setting and,
Put
it's
it out to a-
prepackaged and then it's put out into a retail cooler, it can't, once it goes out to retail, it needs to be at the proper temperature. You can't, have a cooling step occurring in a retail service case. That's meant for cold holding, not for, cooling, so it needs to be cooled, prior to going out to retail.
I figured that's what it was.
Yeah, good question.
So with the new temperatures, it seems like they're, you don't have to heat it up as much. And it wasn't the old code 40, now it's 41?
140 versus 135.
So
So-
it actually made it work.
Science has proven that 140 is equivalent to 135. So again, they've used scientific measures, HACCP analysis type, critical control point analysis. They studied various situations, even probably hand swabs, when they figured there wasn't a need to wash in between glove use for the same purpose. Again, excuse my voice, it's all based on science.
Because it seemed like they eased it up a little bit.
Yeah, they did. The reason they did is there's no need to keep it at 140.
And it's
when
41 now
135.
instead of
It's
40.
140 degrees right now, 41 for the low side, the cold.
It used to be
holding.
40, right? 38, 40?
Well, if you're there, that's good, I like that.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
I might have told you that just to keep you down below 41. But no, 41 for cold temperature and less, and then 135 or more for hot holding.
Any other questions?
I have one question.
I just want to make sure
Myra,
that,
did you have your
our
hand up?
guests too have questions.
My
Yeah.
question was that, I just took the, SurSafe today.
Oh, good.
And, it's paying more than what you did right now, so, but they don't have, 2013 full code, they have like 7 edition. So just want to be sure that I'm not getting the wrong information. If you guys showing up to my place and you ask me, so what time the food should be like, hot, and it will be 135 instead of say 140. So we'll get in trouble just because.
Oh,
it's
so the
different.
ServSafe course that you took had the 2017 code, is that what you said?
It has this code.
This code,
From 41 to
Okay.
135.
okay. Yeah, so currently, 140 is what we're working with right now.
So that's
If
what
I go into a restaurant and I take a hot holding temperature and it's 138, am I gonna violate you? Probably not, because I know based on science, what Mark said, that, bacteria isn't gonna proliferate at that temperature,
I
so.
just want to be sure that now that I took the new SurSafe, because mine
Right.
expired 5 years ago,
Right.
so just be on the same page with,
Mhm.
Right.
with you guys.
And there is a section in the code, and Mark knows this, and it's called public health rationale. So that kind of gives us a caveat to use public current knowledge when we conduct inspections. I mean, we're not gonna use antiquated theories in science, and be unreasonable.
Yes, sir.
You stated at the beginning that if the town adopts the new 2013 food code, what is the next step and how come it's not there yet?
It's up to the board to decide. They wanted your input first. And then if the board, after this meeting, decides to adopt it, I would ask that they adopt it before the beginning of the year, the calendar year, so that your permits are being issued under the 2013 food code. And that way, we're in consistency with, as you both just took the test, with the certifications. And so that's how I would ask the board to consider it.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
to what I was kind of getting at with my questions earlier, and I think to your benefit, you're already out there being trained on the stuff in the new code. which is different from the code that we're following. So I see there only being an advantage to moving to the new code. And I think it benefits us as a board and you as the folks who are following the code. And of course, your customers, right? Because the idea, ultimately, the goal of the code is to keep them safe. And when they're safe, they're happy, and when they're happy, they keep doing business with you, which makes us happy too.
Right.
But short of a couple of temperature changes, there's nothing up there that any restaurant's probably not doing already anyway.
Most likely.
Yeah, I would say the people that are following,
Knock
you know,
on wood.
yeah, they're gonna knock on wood, they're gonna follow John's lead and knock on wood. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've had a couple cases where they're not, so,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why, you know,
No,
we do this in public, yeah.
And again, it's a team effort, you know, we're here to be a team member with you. We need each other. The last thing you need is to have your name out in the press that, you know, various situation may have happened here, such as a food poisoning. That obviously is why we work as a team, to prevent illness. And the beginning of this, if it does get approved, I'm sure Tom is going, and I will too, spend that extra time that you may want us to make sure you're aware of the changes in the form, the changes in the process. That's what we're here for. We work as a team. So we want it to work for you as much as we want it to work for us, for the benefit of all. I mean, it really does benefit everyone.
Yeah, and to echo that, it's more about compliance through assistance, not us coming out to tell you that you're doing something wrong, but we want to be accessible to you, and if you have a question, just, you know, call us and we'll come out and assist you.
All right, so I can get you guys out home at a decent hour, because we got a lot more work to do. Does anybody else have any other questions? I know you do, KG, but I just want to make sure that, anybody in the back there? We all good? All right, so just want to, for you, sir.
Yeah, I had one question. So I don't know whether the school department, anybody here.
Oh, we do.
We have here somebody?
Yep, right here.
And-
Oh, okay,
And the
that's
school
good.
department has several certified food managers,
Good, good,
almost their
good.
entire staff, not just one per
Right,
school,
the other,
are certified.
We just did our serve safe again, we do it actually every 4 years.
That's Lisa Bowden.
And we just did it August 20th, we had some people that couldn't be there, they did it last week here at Town Hall. And I will say, I've been taking that test for many years, it was very different this time. A lot more focused on employee health and the alert things, when to close down a business.
the other thing,
Seafood.
yeah, the other thing I wanted is Tom can give the PowerPoint, somehow we can link it up to our website, that'll be nice.
Sure.
But make sure you add a disclaimer saying that this is not completed. That way they don't
Just
limit themselves.
General overview.
And there was a link for some form that you had suggested for them. So
Yeah.
that also can be provided onto the web so that they
Mhm.
can
Yeah,
download it if they
absolutely,
want
yeah.
it.
And we can talk to the WACA people, they can put it up on WACA as well, too.
Right.
WACA-TV, just so you know what WACA is. There's people in here that don't live in town, they're probably,
Yeah.
WACA, what's going on?
Right.
That's our
The-
local cable station.
The other thing is that our inspection report form should be changed because the wordings there should change to priority and other stuff that you have instead of critical and non-critical or whatever that. So that it's not confusing for them to see two different statements in the one here, one on the form.
Well, we can dive down more into the details,
Sure,
because I think you're
okay.
bringing up
I
good
think I'll
points, but
bring it
really
up.
what I want to do is I want to get these nice
Sure,
people
sure.
back home.
John has a
Yep, John has a question.
Do you know, quick, when you said you had the test here, maybe, you know, I had to send a bunch of my guys into Boston to take that test. It was like it was all day and it was kind of expensive. Maybe if you could just, if you knew the town was having something, send it out.
The school does it separately, but.
Oh, I thought you said you had
Oh,
something
no,
here.
I needed space, because town
Oh,
people weren't
okay,
here.
I'm sorry,
And
okay.
the schools
But
were
Never
closed
mind.
one day
It's
last
something that, you know, and I come from a city where they have a restaurant association, and they work on projects like that. And I've always suggested that, you know, even retail, that it may be a good thing someday to consider a restaurant a local one, because then you could possibly do training like that. We could go to your events too. So something to keep in mind, and we can work together on maybe a training that could be held somewhere for as we see the need. If there's like 20 people that need training, we just have to be careful not to get into a conflict of interest. If we choose a vendor, we have to be careful that another vendor doesn't say, why didn't you choose me? You know, so that's where it gets a little dicey on the public side of it, but it's not bad. We did that originally, John, you remember, and Lisa, were you here when we adopted what we did is we adopted the requirement for certified food managers in 1993, 94. And we were one of the only towns in the state doing that. So we saw the essence of doing it, and we did it. And we did have town training because there was no trainers around. So we basically we were ahead of the 1999 food code when it got adopted for having certified food managers. So we did it before. We possibly, as long as we don't get involved with conflict of interest, we possibly could help with you on a consideration for that.
But I think John brings up an excellent point, though, I mean, it's fair to say that the Metro West area has been the boom in the restaurant industry, you know, hospitality restaurant industry. And the expense that a business owner has to incur to send his staff, and you gotta work because your employees are in Boston. It is something that, and I think this is a good thing that you do bring to the Visitors Bureau's attention, you bring to Senator's bill, because there need to be resources allocated for the Metro West area, not just Ashland, but Framingham, Marlboro, that type of area. So I think you bring up a good point, and once again, it's another reason why I think it's important that we have a regional Board of Health meeting, because these types of issues, not only the opiate crisis, but, things like that. I mean, it's a huge expense, and ultimately, the customer's, gonna benefit from it, so I think he brings up a good point.
And if we did that, John, we could go out for bid then for the
Right,
vendor.
right, and I was gonna say, then we're legally compliant, because it's a bidding process. Yeah, all right, last call for questions. Seeing none, I wanna thank everybody for taking the time. Miles, I think maybe we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll pick back up on a board discussion after,
Yeah.
okay?
Make sure they
All right, good evening. We'd like to call this Tuesday, September 25th, 2018 Board of Health meeting back into session. We just finished the public discussion and overview of the 2013 Massachusetts Merged Food Code. We do have a Shaw's appointment at 8:30, but if we jump to the agenda to item number 5, an update on Mill Pond Rest Home. You guys saw all of the emails and flurry back and forth this week. We had Mill Pond in at our last meeting, and we specifically asked for some updates. Mr. Orem, I think I'll turn that over to you.
That's fine. So they did submit to us a disaster policy and procedure pamphlet, pretty much, and the other part that we did ask for was to make sure they submitted an updated list of who they contact, and it goes anywhere from our department, fire, Kathy, obviously, the person that's in charge, right down through their maintenance. Federated Church is the church they're utilizing, their bosses, as well as the high school. So the high school number, though, we're gonna sit down with Kathy, we being the fire chief and myself, because she has to realize, she has to go through the emergency management director if she's gonna be looking for sheltering. And it would have to be a town-wide issue, such as a hurricane, tornado. If it's indeed directly related to something of maintenance at her facility, she needs to have a plan in place to acquire and spend the resources to send them to a facility that can handle any of the needs that might be there, including medical. The town's not here for that purpose, but we are here to help them the best we can. And obviously, we would help them in any way we can when that time is appropriate. We don't, because, one of her main issues was, well, when are you gonna help me? And we told her, we're here to help you whenever we can, but there's points where you're responsible for having your own facility for sheltering.
Do any questions from the board?
I did see that they had cleaned up the basement. Has anybody gone and inspected, or?
I have not been back, but the fire chief, well, I went back 2 times after you were there, and it was like, I may not have mentioned this to the board, but they have a concrete floor there. I would have never known that on day one. I was like, I thought that was a dirt floor. They had so much dirt accumulating on the concrete from the water leak that was coming through the base of the foundation, pushing that dirt in right through that whole cellar floor. KG, you were there too. Didn't it look like a dirt floor to you?
It did.
A
That's why I
wet
said it needs to
dirt
be
floor.
cleaned up.
Yeah, so, they did a good job. They obviously sent us the bill to show us they paid a tremendous amount, but
Tremendous amount.
again, that's their responsibility, and I think they understand now, and I have to say, I think we're moving forward now.
Yeah,
And-
there's some bulky equipment here and there. We
Yeah.
didn't want somebody who's repairing to fall down there.
Yeah, exactly,
Damage.
yeah.
So it's better to clean
Well,
it
and
up.
Tom went there as
If you
well.
go or somebody goes there
Yeah.
next time, take a look at the basement.
Well, Tom went through the basement too and told them the cans have got to come out, the old food that was stored down there, so that, and Tom, you'll be doing a re-inspection at that.
I'll do a revisit, yeah. They've already provided, as Mark said, the documentation of the remediation and the cleanup.
So,
I also cited them for eventually I hope they could fix the driveway, which is
Mhm.
yeah,
not a major issue, but it kind of is.
But it is,
it's
yeah.
that whole view,
Divots
yeah.
and potholes, and it's kind of dangerous out there, so.
And I just.
Go ahead, Chris.
One of the concerns I haven't had a chance to read through the entire new disaster policy and procedure that they sent, but just on a quick comparison, what I'd really like is a full comparison to make sure that the changes that they made were changes that we had asked for. But the interesting thing I noticed, on the old policy, it had an effective date of 10/25/11, and this may just be a clerical error, but on the new version, even though it does list a revised date of 9/12/2018, it shows an effective date of 10 years prior.
Right. I noticed the exact same thing. And
Yeah,
and that-
that's a long time,
Yeah.
yeah.
well, and I'm always a glass half full type of guy,
Mhm.
but experience has told me that we need to dig a little bit deeper here.
Yeah.
You can have this, but if and the one thing I stressed at the last meeting is, I want a training schedule. We didn't get one.
Mhm.
to your point, there's a lot of information here, but, you know, if you haven't read it, it's worthless information. The day that KG and I, and then eventually you were up there, nobody knew where to start, where to finish. I'm not convinced after seeing this, and you bring up a great point, that we have that. So I think you and the
There's only
chief,
a one-page page with names and check marks, and
Right.
that was it. But it doesn't say what they trained, it just
It
said they
just-
were trained.
it doesn't say that they're trained.
It's very, I thought, yeah, it's
Now-
that there, yeah.
Wishful thinking, can you and Chief Roby sit down and have that conversation
Yeah.
and have that laid out? I think you can. Where I'm concerned, and I think we have to discuss this in public, is we called them into a Board of Health meeting because I think the board took this very, very seriously. This response, to me, isn't the response that I was hoping for.
No, I see this response as a response because they were asked to respond, and not a
Right.
response because they wanted to do the right thing and give an appropriate response. You know, at the very least, if it was too time-consuming to do the appropriate response, come back and say, look,
We
we're
need more
working on
time.
it, we need more time. But, you know, we got it at basically the last minute that we were supposed to get it. And it was, you know, oh, did you get that done? And they threw it together. That's how it feels to me.
Well, doesn't this scream that?
Oh, yeah. I
That,
mean,
this
is
screams that,
insane.
and I'm not gonna mince words, I'm grossly disappointed
And
by the
this is
response.
a Post-it note
Right.
on top of a handwritten document that was photocopied.
So, you know, how do we wanna respond? Do we wanna call them back into our next meeting? Do we wanna authorize me to fire off a letter to let them know that our disappointment? I mean, I don't think we could, I mean, we're going into bad weather season, we gotta get ahead of this, I think,
At
you know?
least we'll give them a chance of making sure they can correct whatever they've not done that yet, so maybe we should send a letter pointing these items that
Okay.
they were supposed to do and not done it, so that at least they would start working on it. You know, if they want to bring them to the meeting, you lose another 15 days of effective work they could have done.
Well, you know, if we, in my theory, that if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So I think I would strongly suggest that we document it.
Mhm.
I make a motion that we have John Pettis send a note with all the deficiencies that they have been identified, which needs to be corrected.
Okay.
I made a motion, so somebody needs to second
Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Second? Further discussion?
What about, should we, in that document, also add something as to, well, obviously give them a time frame in which it should be due by,
Mhm.
and a consequence?
Well, I like that as well.
I mean, it's pointless to not have a consequence at this point, I think, right?
I mean, I looked through both of them, and I agree with what, you know, with what everybody's saying. It just looks like it was regurgitated.
It's a
you know.
boilerplate, it's a
Yeah, right.
boilerplate.
The
So-
reason this
but-
says
But
that
I don't
wrong-
know, but I don't know that they know where to start,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know where to get a disaster relief plan, but there's probably some other documents that are more appropriately written somewhere that.
Tom actually mentioned to me earlier offline that there was a template, right? It was a-
There's a guidance, I just
Guidance
emailed it
document,
over
right.
to Mark,
Okay.
Mark's familiar with it too, I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's more, I'm sure the DPH has another one for
Uh-huh.
specific to nursing homes, the one I'm referring to is for, you know, retail food establishments. But it does delve into, you know, disaster plans, contingency plans,
Mhm.
power outages, sewerage backups, interruption of water service, things of that nature.
I guess where I was kind of taken back, not to,
No,
is
go ahead.
Mr. Sweeney, who came, who was the regional manager. To me, first impression, he seemed to take it pretty seriously. So, now that he's aware of it, I think the onus goes back to him. You know, not that we ignore the local piece, but we gotta go back to him and, you know, you come and say you own 5 of these properties.
Yeah.
Well, if you own 5 of these properties and you send this, quite obviously, in those other 4 properties aren't our jurisdiction, but that's very concerning, because I could see how one wouldn't, and then the guy goes back and says, hey, you know, this is what we do in the other place. It's quite obviously they don't have anything, and that's, to me, is the biggest concern. Like I said, we don't have jurisdiction over the other 4, but,
I cannot give them the benefit of not knowing it, I'm sure, because they're running the other facilities, I'm sure they.
Well, and
Right,
and
that's my
you-
point.
You probably, do you have the email
Yes.
from Matt?
yes, right here.
Okay, he does mention, I think, First of all, just so the board knows, he sent me an email on September 12th. We met, I think he was trying to move this along. We met on September 11th.
He sent it
And, well, he sent it on the 12th. It's his date on the
2:36,
email.
yep.
Yeah. And on that day, that went into my spam file. So I talked to Kathy prior to this meeting, saying, Kathy, you know, that one sheet isn't going to do it. And she said, what are you talking about? We sent you the plans the next day. And I said, I never got them. So she sent them to me again, and then I checked my spam file, and that's, I don't know why he ended up there, because no one else that was in the spam file really needed to be on my regular email. But he did say that, you know, they put together this emergent, I think it's a boilerplate, and they just updated it. I think what the board may want to do is call them back in to see what type of training they did with each employee. You know, we have to deal with that all the time, training certified food managers, training their staff.
Well, we asked for
And,
that too, yeah.
And then the other thing is, they agreed to act, both churches, she said, were agreeable, but do they have something in writing? Because I know even for us, I need to make sure the schools are acceptable, and they put it in writing that we can use the schools for sheltering. So, you know, agreements are one thing, but it'd be nice to see them signing something. Because it says,
Well, I'd like to see something from the
We
Federated
can
Church
document
saying, yeah,
everything.
we,
yeah, because it said they declined signing an agreement. Well, that doesn't help in an emergency. They, you know, you don't have something in writing,
it doesn't happen.
so maybe call them in to have a dialogue. The fire chief and I want to have a dialogue with Kathy, but I think maybe better than that is calling Matt back in here
I think
and
that's
having
the
a
better
dialogue
plan.
with him. And Kathy, I'm not saying Kathy doesn't belong here as well, but just to make sure that it's gotta be more set in stone, you know, with writing, with written
I agree.
agreements.
I'm not just new to the board, I'm new to the, you know, in living in Ashland, I've seen the place in passing, driving past it, but I've never been aware of the issues that they've had over the time. And the last time they were here, we had some residents from town bring up that this isn't their first trip to this negative rodeo, as have some of you who are much more familiar. And I'm very concerned because they're in charge of caring for people's lives.
Mhm.
And from what I understand, these are people that aren't really very capable of taking care of themselves.
No.
And if that's the case, then we really need to be as hard as possible on them to make sure that they comply. And if they don't comply, there has to be a serious consequence.
Mhm.
That's my opinion.
So, John, just to add,
Please.
you know, not like I want you to do their homework for them, you know, that's for sure, but I think if you're gonna if, you know, we're gonna send a letter and you're gonna draft it, I think, I don't wanna say constructive criticism, but at least outlining some of the things that we spoke about here, like you
Mhm.
may wanna look for, you know, an updated, you know, plan and maybe cite, you know, something like this that the Department of Public Health may have for institutions such as, you know, nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, you know, rest homes, so that maybe they can update their whole, you know, the whole document.
And I agree,
and
that's part of
bring it
our
in.
job.
Right.
Providing
So
those
if we can,
resources, right.
You know, at least give them a little constructive criticism about, you know, we're looking for, hey, have you contacted, you know, in writing, you know, officials from the Federated Church in case something happens, you know, you know, have they signed any agreements? I think, I wouldn't even have thought of that. That's a great thing to do. Just like you said, you know, the same thing happens in my profession. If I didn't document it, it doesn't matter almost if I did it, but if I didn't document, I didn't do it, I definitely didn't do it. And I think that's really important.
To that point, one of the things we do here, when we look at revising a policy or a procedure or a manual, we take the document, we make revisions, and we show the changes very clearly. We use an alternate color text so that we can see the
Yes,
changes
yes.
between document A and document B. And that would be certainly a suggestion I would make to them to say, well, when you
Mark
give
the
us your new
documents.
disaster policy and procedure, mark off the changes, what's new, what's been eliminated, what's been added, what's been changed, so that we can see, so that your people can see, and so that it's very clear.
Okay.
And I can send Judy Bernice from DPH what they sent us and ask if they have any better documents than, not boilerplates, let's say, I won't say better, if these are what are expected at the state level and can additional information be required?
I
So,
mean, just
yeah.
like the food code document, you know,
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
it's,
Are we doing this via email? Are we doing this
Well, I can
via
send that
certified
email
letter?
right
No,
now
I'm just,
to Judy, to Judy.
no,
Byers.
I'm talking to these.
Oh,
Are we
to
doing it, are we
Millpond.
doing this via email, or are we doing this
Send it by
certified
email
letter?
and send it by email so that it reaches faster and then.
I feel more comfortable, I mean, we'll do it email, but I also feel comfortable with the
Sure.
certified letter, because
Yeah,
then
yeah, that can.
it
you can
didn't end up
mention
in
it, it'll be
somebody's
sent- yeah,
spam
yeah.
folder or
Yeah.
something like
No,
that.
I
yeah.
understand. I
Mention
agree.
in the email that
Right.
It happened once.
Right, no, no, but,
Yeah,
yeah,
it could sit in their spam folder too, so.
right,
just wanna
and
make
that's
sure.
what I'm saying, okay.
I think both.
All right, so
will
we
be
have a
better.
motion and a second, further discussion? Only because we got Shaw's out there. If not, I'll commit to having that out by Thursday.
Okay.
I have a full day tomorrow, but I'll get it out by Thursday.
You just call for the vote.
And, so call for a vote, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
And if I can, just one question.
Please.
I can easily send that email to Judy, just asking if these forms that they submitted are sufficient, so we have their backing as well, and see if she can offer any additional updates.
No, that'd be
I can
great.
easily-
That's a
Okay,
great idea.
yeah,
That's a great idea, yeah, very good.
okay.
I do want to circle back, because I don't feel like, and I was just feeling time to keep the agenda rolling. I do want to, before the end of the meeting, so I don't want, I do want to circle back about the merged food code and the next steps. But I do know that Tom has a long way home, and we do have members from Shaw's out there, is that the case?
Yep, I can
Okay.
ask them in if they.
All right, it looks like they're on their
Just
way.
recommend.
Just so the public knows, we have Shaw's Supermarket, repetitive violations of a roof and a water leak, ceiling tile damage and mold. Gentlemen, why don't you pull up a couple chairs here, and we'll get you a couple microphones, and how you guys doing? Thanks for coming tonight.
You wanna grab that one?
Yeah, I'll let Tom intervene too.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming. Because it is a public meeting, you guys have to tell us who you are and where you live, and then we'll get started. We'll start with you, sir.
My name is Mark Birmingham. I am one of the facility managers for Shaw Supermarkets, and I'm actually live in Dover, New Hampshire.
Thank you for coming.
Tom Crook, I'm the store director here at the Ashland Shaws, and I live in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Brian McFarish. I'm the Director of Risk Management and Food Safety for Shaw's, and I live in Plymouth, Mass.
You guys all traveled a long way, so thank you for doing that.
So, just so the board knows, we received a citizen complaint a couple weeks ago, and it was based on some ceiling tiles. The person was severely allergic to mold and mildew and saw some mildew or mold on a tile, a ceiling tile. In turn, Tom just happened to be coming in the next day, so I asked Tom to do an investigation, and he discovered that it wasn't just there, but there were water leaks in other areas as well. Tom, I'll let you speak for your report, but the report was issued, and from that point, compliance was not completed. And I did talk to Tom about the concern with repetitive violations, and as the board just heard, we're dealing with critical situations. If water had leaked onto food and so forth, now we're realizing an issue that could be very concerning with the food code as well as safety of the food. So, Tom, if you can explain the times, I went there once and still saw some staining around the fire unit that had to be changed in a special way because it would have made the sensor go off. But you went back twice, I believe, or at least one. I was there once afterwards. You were there.
I went back once, I believe. So just to recap, on September 8th, we received a constituent complaint, as Mark pointed out. The customer shared concerns about mold on a ceiling tile, wet ceiling tiles. The constituent provided pictures of the said ceiling tiles. So consequently, on September 8th, I conducted a full sanitary inspection of the Shaws in Ashland, and cited the establishment for ceiling tiles above aisles in the store where food is displayed and stored that had evidently watermarks and stains. I took some photos myself. One of them appeared to have mold spores on it. It kind of corroborated the photo that was provided by the constituent. And I cited a violation of 3-307.11. It's a miscellaneous source of contamination, potential contamination for food, and a floors, walls, and ceiling violation to repair the ceiling tiles. And also asked to remediate any mold if there was a presence of mold. On September 19th, I conducted a compliance inspection. It was apparent that some of the tiles had been replaced, however, they appeared to be waterlogged and soaked with water. It was my determination that that wasn't a sufficient reparation for the problem. Seemed to me that the water was still an issue. The leak, wherever it was coming from, was still an issue. So I presented the manager on site, Chris Montgomery, with an inspection report with violations outstanding. And I explained to him that we needed some more decisive action on the issue at hand. We wanted repairs made to the roof if it was a leak in the roof. I think we later found out through a letter we received from store director Thomas Crook that it in fact had to do with condensation lines from refrigeration inside the interior of the ceiling. But at any rate, we felt that there was a lack of a sense of urgency and a lack of communication in terms of how, what, when, where, how is this going to be repaired. We take it very seriously, especially in a supermarket where there's any non-potable water potential to leak onto food products being sold to the public. We appreciate the communication we've received since then from Shaw's detailing repairs and sources of moisture. That concludes my testimony.
Yep, thank you, Tom.
All right, questions from the board?
Do you know how long has this leak been there, or that they?
There's refrigeration pipes that run above the ceiling, and
Right.
they feed the frozen food cases and in both aisles. The store has been opened 15 years, 16 years. When the store is open, the insulation is obviously installed. It's put in with sealed with glue and taped up, so it prevents when systems go into defrost, the pipes heat up, and you get some moisture that will leak out if the insulation is not sealed. The insulation, the seals broke, and it started to leak.
Did it happen that day, or
No.
It was there for a long time?
We don't know how long it was there for.
So that's the reason I ask, is that you're a big business
Right.
and there are a lot of clients.
Right.
If something happens, then you have a large population that gets affected. So we need to pay more attention to these things and be more careful and act on it as quickly as possible to remedy it.
We-
That's important.
We should have identified this earlier.
Right.
in the
Not a
first-
small establishment where you could say, okay, whatever affects few people, but still,
Right.
those few people are important here, but it's a big business
Right.
here. And anything happens in a large
I
scale.
think after Tom's inspection, we brought a roofing company out. Roofing company did the inspection and identified what they thought were some flashing damage on the roof and 2 small spots that they actually repaired. We thought that was the source, and we replaced some 50, some 35 some odd tiles, literally in a row, in these sections. In doing that, the contractor that actually removed it, I think when Tom came back, he missed tiles that were around a light fixture, and I think you actually even referenced around a sprinkler head. So that contractor did not do those, so it should have been done at that time. All the tiles then were replaced, and the following week, that Tuesday, we had that heavy rain. I think, Tom, you come back in that Wednesday after the rain on the 19th for re-inspection, and now there's more water damage to brand-new tiles that were literally put in the week before, and everybody thinks it's roofing again, right? That clearly US Roofing hasn't addressed the issue. So on 8/9, the first, 9/8, the first inspection. On the 10th, Hub's in replacing Hub, our construction company, comes in and replaces all the tiles. The roofing company comes in and repairs. The 19th inspection happens, and we now have more water damage. And 6 out of 12 tiles that are lined up with the lighting were not replaced. So they should have been replaced on the first time. Now we have new water damage. Where's this source? We have US Roofing go back after these heavy rains and say, whatever you did last week, clearly we're still having issues in the same area. They go up and look at the roofing and come back with a report to us and say, it's not your roofing. They open up the ceiling tiles and say, you're, just what Mark basically said. The refrigeration lines are now, the insulation has delaminated and starting to fail, and the condensation is dripping, and it's all along refrigeration lines. So that does not mean that there's other spots and, random, that there's small water damage, but the main area that I think Tom's referencing has all to do with that frozen and dairy section where the worst of it was, and it's all related to the delaminating of the insulation.
So I feel like the sequence of events, you kind of got kicked in the shins right after you got kicked in the belly, and I can see that. I appreciate you kind of followed through with it at least, but my concern is the delamination of those insulation pipes. So we know that they're in the ceiling. We've known that all along, and I'm going to need help from my colleagues here, in particular Mark and Tom. Is there no protocol for inspecting those on some regular basis, or is it such a highly unusual thing for those to delaminate that no one thinks to inspect those?
It's probably more of a building department issue. The fact is if I see a source of, non-potable water, I don't know.
Right.
This is a learning experience for me. I was under the assumption, like was touched on, that it was a leaking roof, and that wasn't the case.
And it makes sense. It would be a logical assumption. I can see that. My grand question is, how common is this I would imagine, and you guys, you're part of a company that runs a lot of supermarkets. Right. Is this something that you've seen before?
Yes.
The delamination?
Yes.
So probably the lamination process has a lifespan.
Yes, it does.
Reasonable to assume.
20, 25 years normally.
Okay. And this was premature?
This was somewhat premature, yes.
Okay. And, you can't, even if there was an inspection process, right, and the lifespan is generally 25 years, maybe a stringent inspection protocol might say check it after 20, right? So we wouldn't have caught this anyway. This was kind of a...
No, I might have a different take on it.
Tom and Mark cannot go up and look up.
We don't do that.
Their level of inspection is...
No, I'm not saying...
I understand, but they cannot sensibly say that it's going to be coming from roof for some other reason, but they can only say the water's leaking. That's what they can come up and say, you need to correct it.
Right, yeah.
So their responsibility ends there, because they cannot climb up and do things for us.
The other thing that could have exacerbated this is the summer that we've had. It's been extremely hot and humid. The area above the ceiling is not conditioned air. It's the area below the ceiling is conditioned air, but the area above is not conditioned air. So any humidity, it may have, we may have got a little bit more moisture on the pipes than we normally would have during a normal summer season.
The dehumidifiers that you can put it on top and then...
We shouldn't have to. And because the insulation is breaking down, that's the main cause of the problem. The insulation started to break down.
Can I back everybody up just a half a step? One, I got a special place in my heart for Shaw's. You guys have been stellars in the community. You always say yes to the community. You help with the Boy Scouts, you help with the Girl Scouts, you've helped with the food pantry drives over the years. You're a valuable asset to Ashland. So I want to thank the members of management for being that. And the expectation is that, we can go forward with that relationship. Where I'm concerned is we identified this problem on September 8th, and you're here tonight and the problem's still not fixed. So my question to management is, where is the sense of urgency, guys? Come on. I understand stuff happens, but, we're 17 days into this. You're a valuable asset to the town. This is unacceptable. And, you know, I think of no other way to describe it. I understand it's an unfortunate situation, but you're serving food, and we've got mold in food, and
Yeah.
you need to reassure this board that, you know,
We are.
this
We
is a
don't wanna-
one-off.
We don't want to appear for you
Right.
in front like this.
Right.
I mean, on the 19th, when Tom came in and said, we now have more damage, we immediately got the roofing company back out, Hussman Refrigeration, to assess the work, and they started replacing all the insulation on Saturday.
Saturday, yes.
And we're now in the process of replacing all of the insulation, and it's a very time-consuming, after hours, up on lifts, replacing that. And so as soon as the 19th, that evening, we were already assessing to now, once we knew it wasn't roof. And hired Allied to come in the following day, that Friday night into Saturday, to begin the work. And they're doing the work, and we believe that all insulation would be replaced by the end of this week.
Yes. And it.
By Sunday, because it says here anticipated by September 30th.
Yes.
And in hindsight, as a store director, when Hub Construction that Monday, Tom came in on Saturday, that Monday, which would have been the 10th, said to me, we've replaced all the tiles except the ones around the light fixtures, we can't do that. I should have called Mark or whoever I had to call in, get the light fixtures gone, then we wouldn't be sitting here, because those tiles that were there would have been gone. Still, the leaks still occurred because of the piping, which we didn't know at the time. But
Okay, well, I
That's on
appreciate
me.
that. So in the both of the experts' opinions,
Well, a couple things.
Right, please.
The pictures that were sent to us by the constituent, they were very vivid about damage. I mean, you could see the mold growing, you could see the water staining. And so, do you have a quality control program that looks at your ceiling once in a while, like every 30 days to, I mean, the mold was so obvious from these pictures. It was growing downward and almost like a beehive. So I'm saying, how did that not get noticed? And that would be one question. And two, would it be also prudent to look at maybe a quality control program in all your stores to say in 20 years, we go up and look up top, where it's difficult to get to make sure insulation's in place. And I don't know if your company has quality control programs of that nature.
We have inspection programs, and to be quite honest, this is something that we depend on the people in the store every day to bring that forward. And we have to do a better job of systematizing it. And I'm not, Tom is running a store, and my guess is he's focusing on our community and our customers. And I bet you he walks by that and isn't looking up and actually seeing it.
50 times a day, probably.
But we have to do a better job of.
that's scary.
But that's what I'm
That's
saying.
real
We have
scary.
to be a better systematized of looking at our physical plant and identifying those and reacting to it sooner. We're looking at how we can do that through a common 30-day type of inspection process to be proactive versus reactive. I don't like to be sitting here and talking to you about a reactive process. Our intent was to fix this as soon as we became notified of the first inspection by doing the roof and so on. And I think we were chasing a solution that wasn't the end solution.
That's understandable.
And, but I think your points of bringing it to a system, we have to do that for the community, for our process, to make sure that we're getting the store directors to respond that way. We do have PM process as well, and we go out and, as a team, we go to facilities and look at the, scope it, and we put a scope file together where we actually determine what are the opportunities within a physical plant. So this will be one of those items that goes into that scope file in all assessments going forward, to say, is that insulation starting to delaminate? Do we think it's got 2 years left, 3 years left? What is the situation? So,
It's for your own sake as well. That's why I ask if you had, the stores has to be, I think it opened around 1986. I was here when it opened. And then they renovated it completely
right.
30, maybe 15 years later. So it's got some use on it. I don't know if they changed all those lines during the renovation or not, but it does have some use on it. So that's why I was curious if there were quality control programs that would recognize. And it sounds like there are, and they're working on better.
adding to that.
But as we sit here tonight, do we have any public health concerns before this is completed on Sunday?
I would ask, is water leaking still? Has the water leak stopped
So there's,
from the refrigeration?
the refrigeration, just based on the area that we're looking at, it's not leaking like it was during the summer because of just the humidity levels. And that's working to our advantage, to be honest with you, of the change in season. Where every night they go in and they replace the insulation to a section, and we're putting the ceiling tiles back up to protect anything from dripping under. And as our goal is to get through the entire piece and then redo all of the ceiling tiles in the area that the replacement was done. So we're trying to close it back up to encapsulate it so it's not dripping. He's doing a daily inspection of the floor, identifying any tiles that potentially have any water on it so that we can react and get those replaced right away.
Go ahead,
And
Tom.
then to touch on what Mark was saying about the mold, that would be one of my concerns, public health-wise, is the mold been remediated? When you did open up the ceiling and looked up inside, was there any more spore growth in there, or that, you know?
I'll have to defer to Mark, and
The process, they go in at nighttime and we're changing 4,000 linear feet of insulation up in the ceiling. So it's a process, it can't all be done in one night, it's just you're ripping and tearing and replacing and gluing. As they're taking it down, they're bagging it and they're getting it out of the building, as they're working along with it. All the tiles, as Brian has indicated, are being replaced as we're going along. They've all been taken out right now. If there's any more damage at nighttime, they're replaced again.
Tell me about food protection measures that are taken during that process. There's also obviously foods on display throughout the store. When that's occurring, is the food protected?
The cases are closed. Those are frozen food cases where they're working.
They're
So that's all
closed.
closed.
Okay.
it's all over frozen section,
All over frozen.
Okay.
in the aisle
And
for
there's
the
no
most part.
particles and dust and debris settling on, food storage surfaces or on top of grocery items or anything of that nature?
No.
What's done to, prevent airborne particles from floating around and settling on areas in the store where food is stored or prepared, or food contact surfaces during those procedures?
So the vendor's doing a cleanup after any repairs, as they remove the tiles and take the insulation and bag it up in the ceiling area. And then they clean that work area and then put the ceiling tiles back in.
Okay.
We could add, additionally, we could tarp over all of the cases
That would help.
as an additional piece to that, to be even more stringent with them. So we could do plastic tarping in the area where anywhere we remove a tile and we're doing that work, we could cover it with plastic tarping.
Okay.
We can make that as part of
We can get that.
as a
Yeah,
process
I think
going
we all
I
forward.
strongly suggest that.
Okay.
Well, but I didn't hear an answer for his question whether that you have leftover pores there. That's what the question that you had, right?
Any mold or mildew in the ceiling cavity, between the ceiling tiles and
We
the
were
roof?
actually up there looking at it this evening, there was not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I personally just think it's common sense that we're covering that, so, I mean, does the board want to take action on that, or mandate that?
If they are working towards cleaning up and going, I think we should let them work on it and come back with a report and say that it's done. Maybe Tom can go back afterwards and then re-inspect it. if
So
that's on
you're
your
under
schedule.
the expectation it'll be done by Sunday?
Yes.
Sunday. And what will the plan be if it's not to be done by Sunday?
We're actually saying Sunday, giving ourselves a couple of days, hopefully gonna be finished by Friday.
Okay.
And just we're gonna have a little bit of wiggle room with a couple of days, just in case they run into some problems.
You be
And in case we have any
Monday?
subsequent work to do.
Yeah, Tom's you're in Saturday, aren't you, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be there Saturday.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll probably drop in tomorrow to see how things worked, with the tarping.
So
and
this
all.
coming Saturday?
This
I would
coming,
suggest-
we had indicated Sunday as a completion day. I'm hoping to be done before then.
We'll see
But that's,
where
we
we are.
put Sunday on the offset just
Yeah,
in
but you
case.
can shoot an email to Mark.
Or
Okay.
even do
Tom.
that.
Well,
If not, I
Tom,
can do the
Tom will be
following
on
Wednesday.
site, yeah.
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 Better,
Okay.
better than that, tonight, if you can take a few shots and send them to me, showing the tarping.
Okay, we got.
When they do
As
that
well as-
tonight,
yeah,
okay.
That wouldn't hurt, to take a few pictures from your phone and send them to us.
Okay.
Tom, you got my email
So,
address.
So cover the frozen food cases.
Yeah, over
Top of the
those, wherever
cases.
you're working, and, maybe 10, 15 feet out from the exposure. If you're pulling ceiling tiles right underneath this light here, I would say try to go 15 feet on each side of it, so
Okay, not a
the
problem.
floatables
I'll call Dustin.
don't float, the floating material.
Mark was talking earlier about maybe putting together some kind of a system where you're checking your ceilings every so often. And it reminded me, and this might be something you can apply, when I go to Direct Tire and just to have my tires rotated, while I'm waiting, at some point my phone buzzes and I've got a text message with a video inspection. They've had a guy walking around with a camera, video inspecting my car and showing all the different things. So, you know, even to just take a phone camera and shoot video of the ceiling every 30 days and have it, keep that on file, take still images. And this way you have a record of it. So, you know, if something does happen, you have a point of reference.
Modern technology.
Yeah.
Really saves the day.
All right, further discussion? So, we're gonna tarp, Tom's gonna be back on, you're gonna be there tomorrow, Tom's
Yeah.
gonna be there on Saturday,
Send me the shots.
and then you'll let us, you'll send us the shots tonight into tomorrow?
Yep, well,
Excellent.
Home Depot's still open.
I guess I just have one closing thought, is that hypothetically, I mean, I know we can't reinvent the wheel, but if we hadn't had a customer alert us to this, how would you have figured it out? What systems are in place?
I guess we would go around, we would look at ceiling tiles on a store walk or on my walk of the store. Usually I'm focused on quality of the
Displays
the
and-
perishables and the displays and things like that, and you know, I will look up more often right now. Hypothetically, I don't know, I mean, we would inspect the store and call in someone to change the tiles. I've managed many different stores, and
I just come from a, hospitality background myself, and many years ago, but, the retail 101, are all the light bulbs lit?
Yep.
And what do you have to do when you gotta look up at the ceiling? So I'm not gonna hesitate to say that this is concerning.
Mhm.
And it's something that we need to be sensitive to, because, I mean, you guys know, you guys are much better at retailing than I'm ever gonna be, but that's retail 101, isn't it? Are all the light bulbs on?
you're right.
And you gotta look at the ceiling to make sure all the light bulbs are on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll go from there. Thanks for your time. Thanks for
you.
coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Tom, good job. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks for burning the midnight oil for us tonight.
Pleasure.
Great job with the presentation. Just,
thank you.
I know you want to get out of here, and I want you to get out of here too, but let's just circle back to the public discussion about the food code. Do we want to take a wait-and-see action? Do we want to take another 2 weeks to think about if we want to adopt it? I mean, what do you guys want to do?
I
Yeah,
would just
I know.
say that, a full board would be the best way, and
Yeah.
hopefully
Well-
Diane will see the
No.
meeting. But I would suggest the board do approve the.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we do it
2013.
tonight.
No, no,
Yeah.
just
I'm not
saying that.
suggesting that we do it tonight.
Think on that line, that's what.
Yeah, I
I'm
would
sorry?
suggest that maybe, let's digest the information we got tonight, and maybe, if not at the next meeting, the meeting after, we put it on as an agenda item, to see if we can get some traction to adopt it.
Any other comments?
But that would be, you think that that's the right thing to do?
Yes.
That's what we should do, right? I mean, they wouldn't have new codes if there wasn't a reason for them. So as long as, to me, it's not a hardship, and none of the vendors, none of the, stakeholders seem to feel like it was. Most of them seem like they're doing it anyway.
That was my biggest concern, and the reality is they're being trained in the new code.
Right, so
Right.
it should be relatively seamless. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's a cost problem
No,
for
I don't
them,
think
other
so.
than to take the time to train.
Yeah, I
their
mean, I do still
employees.
think that once we adopt it, there has to be a buffer period. I think just out of,
Well, I think even if you adopt it starting calendar year, Tom's not gonna go in and tear the house down, it's an educated
well, yeah, but I mean, if
process.
we're adopting it, in the next couple of weeks,
Then they
that's a
get 2
buffer
months,
period.
Yeah, if we're doing October.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You'll
you're
have
talking a
November,
60-day
December
period.
buffer period for answers.
Yeah,
And
but-
even if question answer type thing, go ahead, Tom.
As it is, you're not just hammering them, you're just telling them this is an issue, fix it.
Well,
And then if they don't repeatedly do it,
Because
then we try to have.
The reality is, right, if right after we enforce it, say for January 1, if there's gonna be any kind of a major violation, it's gonna be way beyond just the differences between those food codes. That's the reality of it. It's not gonna be just, oops,
Well, the-
134,
But the reality is, and this is a compliment to both Mark and Tom, is I've had the pleasure of going on good visits, and I've had the pleasure of going in on bad visits for vendors. And the one thing that both of these gentlemen do is they don't get emotional, they stick to the facts,
Yeah.
and they stick to the benefits of it. So
Yeah.
Tom has never gonna go into an establishment and blah, 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 you know,
No.
code. No, he's gonna very calmly, very professionally go, this is the code, do you understand? You know, we've done multiple trainings with the problem restaurants in the town, so, I mean, that is the one nice thing about it. I mean, there are other communities where food inspectors go in
Thank
there,
you.
boom, 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 you know, with the guns blazing. And we don't have that here,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why I made the point tonight to say that, hey, you know, we're your friend, you know, we're the friend who's gonna hold you accountable, but we're your friends, we want it to be an educational piece. Because even with that restaurant that we had some press about is, we didn't go in there and say, blah, 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 we went in there, hey, how can we help? So,
Right, exactly.
yeah, and that's kudos to Tom and to Mark as well, so.
And
That's
also
good.
that must be working because of the food report that we just got was spotless.
Yeah.
So-
And
That's nice to see.
it wasn't an accident that as many people showed up today as did. That was, I think, that was really enlightening and for me, positive to see.
Well, and I think that, not to add more work to Laura, who's already underpaid, we should, you know, at least send out a thank you email to everybody who did come and, you know, at least acknowledge the fact that they were here, and thank you, and, you know.
And not to underestimate the fact that Laura not is just underpaid, but she was a major factor in having a lot of these people here by sending out additional
Right.
notices, so thanks to Laura.
Absolutely.
It takes a team, the board, the staff, the people in the audience, it takes a team. It doesn't happen with one person. And it's the way it has to work, and I think more and more food vendors realize how important we are to them. Know that we are a team member, and their survival is based on what we help educate them on.
Well, you know, as we move into our next topic, I mean, you know, and I mean this as a positive, is that you think about where we were 18 months ago and think about where we are tonight. I mean, I think we're on the right path. So I thank you to everybody, especially you, Tom, and
Oh, thank you.
the entire staff. I think we're back on the right path, so thanks. Tom,
Thank
go
you.
home, will you? Come on,
All right.
go home.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
All right. Good to see you.
You know, we have another major market here, the market basket. Do you know where the similar structures exist?
Sure, maybe we'll go to
Do
the,
they have
we'll
a
go to the cherry
problem of the
blossom.
same kind?
Do
that
We
we
haven't
do
had
have- you
it.
can see
They're a
one of
newer
the ones we've had
facility,
some
but they're not that much
issues
newer
with,
than
but
Shaw's
Amy is
renovation.
like-
But
about-
maybe we should
Yeah.
ask them to look around and remind
Yeah.
them before
Well,
the disaster happens in them.
Well, I was being as tactful as I possibly could,
Tom,
KG.
just so you know, little reminders to the larger facilities to keep an eye upstairs, you know, look up once in a while.
Right,
No,
You know,
but-
like market
right,
basket.
the
But-
ABCs of inspections, floors, walls, and ceilings.
But as
right?
I was saying, I mean,
Light bulbs.
they're retailers. You cannot tell me,
Yeah,
you cannot convince me at all. They're retail 101. The first thing they do is to make sure everything is lit, everything is displayed. And they know that I know and that we know that was BS, you know? And that's why I said there wasn't a sense of urgency. They've been given their one shot, and we
And I
don't,
feel
we
like
can
when
only
I was
judge them on
there,
how they go from here.
There
is what I'm
was a
saying.
general awareness of, oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of knew what was going on, but, I mean,
Right.
like you said, I mean, it's ABCs, like, oh, okay. you
That's
know.
why I asked the
Well,
first question.
it does raise the question, you know, do we need to look at, and I don't know if this would fall under our jurisdiction or, you know, buildings and stuff like that, but, you know, if this laminate is not, I lost the words that he used, but the failed seal of these pipes, the insulation, right, at some point, shouldn't we require them to look, you know, pop open the drop ceiling and look under there and see what these pipes are looking like after some period of time to make sure that laminate is holding? I mean, I would assume that every major supermarket, every type of thing that has this type of, these major refrigeration systems has these pipes. And, you know, okay, so maybe we know that 25 years is how long it's supposed to last, but shouldn't there be some inspection protocol to look at them every 10? You know, to make sure
Right.
that the seals are right, to make sure that they're not failing and that they're performing properly because of the damage they
So
can
it's a
do.
proactive, not a reactive
Yeah.
approach, yeah.
They should have a standard operating procedure.
That should be-
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, who's responsible for it and what board it falls under to ensure
Well,
that
that
they
would be
do?
their responsibility.
Right,
Right.
that's
you know.
theirs. But my point is
They
it
should be
didn't get
doing
to that point in one day. That
Yeah.
got to that point in
Yeah.
that was weeks.
Well, it more than that.
It wasn't that, it wasn't like the pipe was
And they've got,
leaking that day and that they got the mold.
stalactites up there.
Right, well, mold stalactite is not going to form in
No,
2 days.
no, not at all.
It's gonna be multiple weeks, and that's where I said the sense of urgency wasn't
Yeah,
there.
even if it is a roof leaking, it's not gonna happen one day.
Correct, correct.
It takes time for 2 or 3 leaks to happen.
Tom, you're still here.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, you
Thank
got a
you,
long
everyone.
drive, so thank you
Great
for
night,
everything.
Tom. Take
Thanks,
care.
thanks for everything you do, you're a real asset to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Discuss the upcoming juuling and vaping seminar scheduled now for November 1st, Tuesday, November 1st, 2018. Mr. Oram.
We have the very attractive that came from the state flyer, and we are planning to send this out tomorrow, and just so the board knows, there's some minimal cost. We do have to have an insurance binder with Mass Bay Community College, that's $50. And also, there's a $200 charge for the purpose of a safety officer at the site. If the board's okay with that coming out of the budget, in tobacco control, under your budget, I hate to jump to the budget, but it.
No, it's part of the conversation.
It is available. The last line item on your second page, year-to-date budgets for our various accounts for revolving funds and the like, you'll see tobacco program, and there is funding in the tobacco program for the 250. So I would ask the board to consider that and approve that tonight, so I can move on and get the invoices set up. And I believe, just for the sake of it, Chris, I don't want to put you in a bad predicament. You may want to exempt yourself from the vote if you helped us with it, but
Yep.
I just don't want to get you in trouble because of it.
No, I
So-
think that's a good.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
well,
good.
full disclosure, since we're on television, I am employed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts at Mass Bay Community College.
So I think it's good that you would recuse. So I will make the motion that we use the proceeds of the tobacco fund for, which is the reason why we set it up, as for training and training and education. So we, in a, what, not to exceed $300?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's not going to.
Yeah, not to exceed $300 to use towards the
I second that.
juuling and vaping at Mass Bay Community College.
I second that.
Further discussion?
Just if I may, Mr. Chair, I will pass it by our accountant, just to make sure. If not, we have other areas in our budget for training and conference. But I would ask we consider that, because that's what that line's for, is to educate, and our tobacco vendors will be invited. It'll be part of the whole process of what we do with our tobacco vendors for training.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain? So we got a 3-0-1 vote? Question, KJ?
Yeah, Mark, those conference funds are meant for conferences, so we shouldn't spend it for the education. One, yeah.
Conference and education is more for the board members and
Right,
staff.
that's what,
Correct.
so we should limit that one to that.
No,
Any
but
case-
years ago, when we set up this tobacco education fund, we specifically
Right,
did it for
right, yeah.
situations just like
Sure,
this.
sure.
And, you know, it was voted on by town meeting and so forth, so that was the whole reason why we did it.
So I think incidentally that MHAB conference is coming along in November, I guess, right? Yeah.
You may want to let us know if you wish to
I
go.
am.
We'll put you, just send us your application
I
so
will.
we can pay Marshall.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that this invitation's gonna go out, and I think the devil's in the details on this, because I think this can be a good thing. One, thank you to Mass Bay, and more importantly, thank you to Chris for setting this up, is I've talked to officials in Natick, I've talked to officials in Framingham, I've talked to, other, now, the intent is that we're going to send this to who?
The nine towns, I'm sorry, it's not, is it 9? It is 9 towns. There's so many regions
Right.
I deal with that are part of the tobacco region. So it includes Sudbury down to Millis, Hopkinton, Holliston, Natick, Marlboro, I think is part of it, Hudson, Southborough, Ashland, obviously.
So you're gonna send it to their boards of health?
Well, to their agents, and
Okay.
so that their agents can distribute it to their boards. I'll ask that they do that.
Okay.
And I've sent them 3 emails just reminding them that we're working on this, but now that we have a date set, I'll send them this brochure and ask that they send it to their schools.
Okay, good.
For their population, and their parents and ask the schools if they can have it delivered home with the students, as well as, and I'll do the same for Ashland. What I'm asking my peers to do, I'm gonna be doing the same here. As well as, I was planning our tobacco vendors.
Okay,
and
good.
As well as, getting it out on our cable, getting it out on our website. And I'm gonna suggest all these things to, the other community members.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to suggest, is that,
In the
yes, it's
newspaper.
important to get it out to the schools, and I've already worked on the paper, but the schools, the
Okay, good.
parents, but more importantly, I think the vendors need to be there.
Chris,
And then the social organizations as well.
is there a capacity limitation on that room?
Yes.
There is, yeah,
So
every
maybe-
room's got a capacity.
Maybe we
limitation.
want to first put it under first come, first served, capacity limitation, and put the number there, and then.
I'll get you what the number is
Okay.
tomorrow, I don't know what it is.
We've been thinking about even considering Evite or something like that, so we can keep track of the numbers.
Good.
That
It's
means
probably a
I'll
good
ask,
idea if we can.
yeah, I'll ask my fellow members to use Evite and keep us up to date on
Right.
the numbers.
I think that'd be good.
Could even
that'd be
maybe add
better.
it to this form here.
Because the feedback that I've gotten from other Board of Health people and then other community organizations, this is desperately needed. Parents don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
And I actually had dinner on a Saturday night, and kind of spur of the moment, with a state trooper. And he's like, I had no idea how huge of a problem this was. And he actually asked if I could get this information to send it to state police, because this is, I don't want to say it's a crisis yet, but it's a huge concern for a lot of generations, because you've got the marijuana piece now, and people are vaping marijuana. You've got the popcorn lung piece that is now becoming more and more prevalent.
Is there any way we can get WACA to film it?
Oh, sure, yeah, we
Yeah,
can
that
do
was a
that.
good question that we were trying
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see.
I'll take care of that, yep. Consider it done. We'll get it done. But I think, you know, the more we let people know that this is available and that it's a good forum, you know, because I don't think this room would be a proper forum for it. I think we could be onto something here. And
Yeah.
once again, it goes back to our core value of being proactive in the community. And then this is a good way for us to network with the other boards too as well. So,
Yeah.
good job.
Oh, to all of us. Again, teamwork. Laura, as I mentioned before, was the one that
She
caught on.
makes you look good, yeah.
No, she does, because
Yeah.
she was looking through different
Yes, she
newspaper
does.
articles, found this being held in Randolph, and looked it up and got us to the right people. So we didn't have to find speakers. They're already there.
Good.
Yeah, and that's, this is, whoever put that together, that's
That was
That's-
Mary Cole.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's,
So, and they have the resources,
Yeah.
because that's what they do all day, is tobacco education. So-
yeah.
While we're in this subject, I did send a PowerPoint presentation with that Shirl Sabaro, presented it at the Mass Health Officers Association or something, is that right? And it talks about the cannabis stuff, so we may want
Do you
to.
have that PowerPoint, Bruce?
I sent it to all of the board members. I don't have it in my hand, but
It was,
Let's have a look.
It was
we
on
don't want,
cannabis.
we probably have to work with our tobacco regulations to look at certain things, maybe we can incorporate or not, whatever it is, but that's a subject for the future meeting that I thought just a
How
reminder.
are we
that's all.
going to get this out to the vendors?
The tobacco vendors?
Yeah.
Email, I thought.
Okay.
Because they have to use Evite, so hopefully, you know,
Okay.
they'll sign
Sure.
up on Evite as well.
All right, this is good. All right, any other questions?
Good job.
All right, so we got about a month to get that going.
Yep.
All right, the review of minutes from our September 11, 2018 meeting.
There's a couple of minor
Once again,
changes in
I
bold.
read them at lunchtime.
Couple minor
Approval of
changes
I.
in
Me too.
bold.
Just a couple words.
Couple words. Has everybody had a chance to review?
You already made those changes on this?
Yep. Just two, yeah, just two of them are in bold, that's all I saw.
I make a motion that we accept the September 11, 2018 board meetings minutes as presented with the corrections stated by Laura.
I'll second that.
Second, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that was easy. Health agents report.
Well, the budget is on the report, and just so the board knows, this is the FY19 budget, and we're okay. We haven't spent our entire budget yet. We should be at about 20%, which we're at, and as we move forward, you know, we'll find, especially with the landfill, there'll be a percentages taken out of that. But again, I think we're in good shape based on the present budget we have in front of us. Nursing services is up a little bit. You'll see a 5% over. We have an active TB case. That means daily medicine adherence reviews. So that costs the town money. And in the past, I've mentioned, I think that we had to go to finance for an unforeseen situation, and TB is usually the issue, where the medicine adherence has to be reviewed by the nurse. But outside of that, everything else is in good order. Dues and memberships are a little bit up because those things are handled at the front.
And
Okay.
I do plan to go to that, one of those dates, the meeting, so I'm not sure whether others know the dates already.
Which meeting are you planning?
The MHAB's meeting, I think it's first week in November, and then I think somewhere
Right.
around
Yeah,
there.
one's in Taunton, one's in Marlboro, I believe November 11th and 18th. I recommend it highly for all the board members. It's a great opportunity. November 10th, I think, and 17th, or something like.
Right.
Marcia sent out notice. You should all be on MAHB's email.
I don't know whether
listserv.
Chris is, or you.
You guys get those
them.
Yeah, I get 'em.
You get 'em.
I did update it to make sure you're all included, so great, they're fantastic in my view, and suggested highly.
Speaking
Yeah.
of emails, only because
That's
they
where
just came
I,
up, are you guys using your?
Not yet, I have to. That's where I
Because I
got,
aired today, I sent you guys all an email from my personal, it's fine, but from my personal email, because I still get in the habit of using our town email, so,
Yeah.
just a friendly reminder, yeah.
Yeah, I did set it up to make sure it worked and everything, but I
Right.
haven't gotten past that yet. I gotta add it to
that's
my.
it. Yeah, that's where I got the other slide that I sent about the
MAHB.
gas leak. One of the
Well, that's not on the
doctor
agenda,
who
so
was
let's not talk
doing
about it.
research in Harvard was talking about the carcinogenic emission out of these gas leaks. Showed pictures of trees getting affected by this leak.
Not on the agenda.
I know that, I just want you to
No, I know.
use that as the subsequent means to look at those health issues.
Good point. Anything else, sir?
No, that's it for now. I'm sure something will come up by the next agenda,
Well, one thing
next meeting.
I think we do need to address, and because it was timely and it was in the paper, and kudos to board members, is that the flu clinic was in Framingham on Saturday. You were there.
Yeah,
Any
it was,
quick update?
yeah, you know, just what a great event. Actually, I met nurses from Newton Walsley, who I work with, who I didn't know did that were actually, you know, giving them the MRC, you know, that all those volunteers that show up there to see that volume of people, and people from all walks of life. You know, there was, you know, a large Portuguese population. There were, you know, people, you know, from affluent areas that came in. You know, it was across the board that people used it, and it was just nice to be a part of. And, you know, like Kitty Mahoney did just an awesome job. I know she's been organizing it for a long time, but everything was down exactly how it should go to basically, they ran out of vaccine. They had to turn, unfortunately, a few people away, but 1,050 doses
Wow.
in
4 hours.
in 4 hours, you know, or less. And it was just well organized, and it was nice to be a part of. You know, it was just nice. I'm hoping that maybe we can duplicate something like that. I know we don't have the population size they have, but, you know, it'd be nice to be able to offer that to people, you know, on a larger scale like they had there, if that's at all possible.
And Ron, what has happened here in Ashland, unfortunately, with 4 large pharmacies, is that what we used to do is have a flu clinic here in town for the elderly. 300 plus is what we were handling, and over the past 10 years, it's dwindled down to where we don't even have a pharmacy go to inoculate. So, and Kitty's aware of this, and she's been a
Yeah.
great partner, so if we can't recreate it here, I think if we can try to recreate it with Framingham, that would be a great regional partnership.
Yeah.
As we start.
Yeah,
And
that
thank you
would-
for doing what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Great.
well, I was happy to represent us, you know, everybody is able to, you know, do different things and be in different places. That's why this all works, you know, you and KG took care of the Mill Pond Rest Home, you know, on a weekend, as did you, Mark, and, you know, everybody, if we can all at least get our hand in somewhere, work together, which is what we do.
Well, the nice thing
That's
is, though,
great.
too, is that we do benefit from the fact that the public health nurse in Framingham is a former colleague of this board.
Right.
And a great Ashland resident, number one, and just even a better person. But
Yeah.
the fact that she wanted to even include us as a partnership, I think, speaks volumes
Yeah,
to
it does.
That's
to
not,
her
yeah.
professionalism as well, too.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's a great resource, so.
yeah, it's great.
Once again, another great team effort by everybody,
Yeah.
so. You know, and Ashland Day, I got to very late, but I got by and to the MRC booth and commented on that you spent some time there and
As
spent
we
some
told
time
out
there. And
one.
it was good, and, you know, I think the more and more we can get out in the community like that, and I think it's good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Get to know each other, too.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, Mike's a good guy.
Mike's a
you
great
know,
guy,
he-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy.
Mike Garnick, for the people to know, our chairman of the Medical Reserve Board.
You know, I think you bring up a good point. I think it might be good, you know, and not that Mike needs another meeting to go to, but it might be nice, you know, as the year goes on, is that he comes in and talks about the features. Because we haven't had that in quite a few years, is the features and benefits, because God forbid there's ever a disaster. You know, you just look at the floodings that have been going on, and, you know, that could be here, and we could, you know, I think that builds a better community, is if we have that working relationship, so.
Is there OML or something that was Steve Morgan had sent? Is that OML's pending or it's resolved?
Is that on the agenda again?
No, I don't
No.
know. Are we-
Then let's
are
not
we
talk
out of-
about stuff
Are
that's
they
not
out
on
of
the
time or
agenda,
something like
though.
that for that? I don't know. Was it?
I don't know I didn't hear what he said.
We'll,
Yeah.
Okay.
maybe you two can connect offline
Okay.
when we're not in
All
a
right.
meeting, but let's try not to talk about something. And with that, how about a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, okay. Seconded.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.